I'll request all the panelists and the moderators to please come on the dais. Rohit, Sarda, sir. Rahul, sir, if you can please escort the panelists to the dais. Nitin, sir, Rohit, Sarda, sir, and Raviraj, Karia, sir. Friends, to lead the panel discussions on the topic expectations from internal auditor and value addition by internal auditor, we have with us the moderator Rahul Punia ji, and we could not think of better dais than three esteemed panelists: Rohit Sarda sir from Adani, Nitin Parekh sir from Zydus, and Raviraj Karia sir from Intas. Very rich and very experienced dais, all thanks to our past WRC chairman Murtuza Kanchwala sir. It is my immense pleasure to introduce you to Nitin Parekh sir. A very difficult job because we have heard Nitin sir more frequently at Ahmedabad branch, and his Ahmedabad branch is very near and dear to us, and we are also very fond of Nitin sir's poetry as well. So Nitin Parekh sir has a brilliant academic track of 6 qualifications including CA, CFA, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. He is serving as a Group Chief Financial Officer in Zydus Lifesciences Limited, having annual turnover of more than 23,000 crores. He possesses 4 decades of post-qualification experience in finance, legal, and IT functions. An ace deal maker, a strategic thinker, an excellent coach, and a person of razor-sharp commercial acumen. He has and handled more than 25 merger and acquisition deals. Mr. Parekh is recipient of more than 20 awards in the decade, including Best CFO of Healthcare and Pharma in 2025 by ASSOCHAM and India's biggest CFO large enterprise by Business World in 2021. In 2023, he's been appointed as a member of Finance and Audit Committee of IIM Ahmedabad for a period of 5 years. He is a member of CFO Council of CII, FICCI, and ASSOCHAM. Sir is a regular speaker at several forums. It is interesting to note that the finance expert is having a great passion for literature and music and a good poet. His 3 books of poem are published in last 3 years. With this brief introduction, I'll request members to please welcome Nitin sir with a big round of applause. We have with us Raviraj Karia sir. He is a seasoned management professional with more than 22 years of experience in the field of corporate governance and the finance management, have a successful build teams with an intent to support business in treasury, merger and acquisitions, internal audit, finance, procurement and commercial functions, have got good exposure to work in pharmaceuticals, clinical contract research, healthcare, supply chain, venture capital and private equity. Sir has performed various roles partnering business in value chain of pharma and healthcare business, helping business to grow, but at the same time have provided valuable insight to remain in control. Have shared his thought on various topics as panelist and speaker on the topic like merger acquisitions, corporate finance, treasury, internal audit, and audit through technology at various forums, organized ICAI, consulting from and within the organization. I'll request members to please welcome Raviraj Karia sir with a big round of applause. And as we know, sir, we have with us our third panelist, Mr. Rohit Sarda sir. He heads Finance and Accounts Division of Adani Ports. Can I request the past WRC Chairman Murtuza Kanchwala sir to kindly step forward to help us in welcoming and felicitating our panelists with a memento. I'll also request Secretary Gandhinagar Branch, Sagar Parmar, to please join us in welcoming the faculty. I leave the floor open to the moderator, Rahul sir, to please take the charge and take it high from here. Thank you, Rahul sir.
Hi, very good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for being here. Thank you. So first question to you, Nitin bhai, like based on your experience, your rich ex based on your rich work experience, so the expectations from the internal auditors are changing from last many years. So now, what do you think that how the expectations are getting evolved from various stakeholders, whether that is a business or board of directors or CXO suit?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Ahmedabad branch and Protiviti for inviting me for this very interesting topic. In my 4 decades of experience as a finance professional, I have seen complete transformation of internal audit function from sort of a conscious keeper or control assurance function to enabling the strategic value. And the contribution from internal auditors are in the entire value chain now. When I view from management angle or CEO, CFO angle in terms of the expectations, I think it covers the whole range. So starting from, let's say, bringing efficiency and effectiveness to the organization. When I say efficiency, it means whether control of cost or maximize some revenue or profits. And there are 3 different levers typically used for this. First is, let's say, time comparison. So if I talk of Zydus, what was the marketing cost to sales in FY 2025 compared to FY 2024? Is there a material change, and whether it calls for any kind of further investigation, introspection, analysis? 2 is the internal comparison. Means I compare, let's say, by one plant or unit in terms of various efficiency parameters with another plant or unit of Zydus. So for example, we compare cost per producing 1,000 tablets in my Moria plant versus Sikkim plant or Badi plant versus Goa plant, and see what actually differentiates them and are there any areas of improvement. Third is external benchmarking, where, for example, I compare manpower cost to business turnover ratio of Zydus with Sun Pharma, Cipla, Dr. Reddy, Lupin, Aurobindo, etc. Now, one question here that any of these analyses and numbers which get thrown does not necessarily lead to any inference. It's just an indicator for you to go into further investigation, because every business, while you say pharma is not pharma, because there are a variety of differences in terms of the markets you address, the products that you are working on, and the innovation that is component of your business. From that, let me talk about effectiveness. So effectiveness, one, in terms of whether there are enough of systems, process, and controls in the organization to ensure that things work the way they're expected to work. So internal auditors bring areas where there are improvement in systems, process, or controls required. Third is in terms of saying that whatever SOPs are supposed to be in operation, are they actually in operation? And we have come across this kind of situations where in one plant, SOP is adhered to, another plant is not adhered to. In one, it is adhered to 100%, in another, it is adhered to 85%. So these are the areas of improvement there. One attendant to this systems part is what I call ESA. It's not ESA, means ESA Deol. It's ESSA. So it's elimination, simplification, standardization, and automation, which are the areas where this can really work. From that onwards to strategic insights in terms of business by using analytics, various other tools, artificial intelligence onwards, several other things. And your exception reporting, the kind Muthuja mentioned about, let's say, running 60 different queries on purchase function, and maybe there are hundreds of queries across the organization to pinpoint out the areas. And then comes assurance function, control function, governance aspect, related party transaction, everything is arm's length basis or not. And the last comes risk. So the entire value chain is not a checklist approach, but approach which goes beyond that, adds value, enables performance, and builds trust for the board of directors. Thank you.
So Rohit bhai, what do you think, like how these expectations are changing? What your experience says here?
So first of all, thanks to panel members and Protiviti to giving me this opportunity. So yes, obviously role of internal auditor has changed from year of decades where we used to report variance with predefined SOP that these are the variance with the respect to particular things and these are the region XYZ. From there we have moved lot of things like I just give one of the practical example in my one of the industry where I work. We used to get the 92% recovery and which was defined it's all where and with process plant and we always used to do the audit 92% recovery. If it is 91, what is the reason? If it is 93, what are the reason? Never challenge this particular benchmark. But once we go into the boardroom, they said, boss, why it is only 92? Why it is not more than this one? Then we have find out that there is a waste which is going into telling them. And we are really not able to identify the reason. So as an internal auditor, we have been advised, boss, go and find out the reason. Then we have gone, we find the design of the plant is something different, the grade which is we are doing, the size of the particular product. And based on this one, I think Protiviti also are the part of one of this assignment and we try to find out complete value chain from the mining industry and the recovery which was 92% has reached to 97%. So that's the way, you know, as an internal auditor, sometimes we have to go operation inefficiency, find out where process can be improved and where we can, you know, really get the value chain. So it's not that just follow the SOP. It's not now from assurance. It's now advisory role which all the internal auditor has to play. Proactively identify the risk like we are working into the infrastructure company. Geopolitical situation is like that every day there is a problem. So which type of risk going to impact me and what is the mitigation plan? So as an internal auditor, I have to go to the boardroom and I have to advise them that these are the risks which you are going to face and these are the mitigation plan around it. So these are the roles which I feel that internal auditor playing as a proactive role, not the postpartum role. Thank you.
Right. Any comments, Raviraj sir?
Thank you, ICAI and Ahmedabad branch. Thank you, Protiviti, Murtuza. Hi, Rohit. Hello, panelists. So, if I give you a perspective from an internal auditor, that you know what are the expectation changes. So, in past, you know, it was just a tick in the box requirement for any board when you know the listing was happening, and it was a statutory tick mark that you know you need to have an internal auditor. But you know the other panelists rightly said, and you know like Murtuza also explained, you know what is an expectation now coming in from an internal auditor. So you need to first of all understand the stakeholders. So what is the expectation from the board, and what is an expectation from your promoter, your CXOs, and your process owners, and particularly again from your own team members. Because all of this sum up together and you know makes your report. So the expectation is that you know you have to fulfill each individual's requirement. Like process owner would not like you to report certain things, board wants you to report certain things, promoter wants the value addition, CFO wants the control. So each individual in the value chain of your work will have a different expectations from you. So you need to understand what you are presenting and whom you are presenting what, and whether it makes sense for them or not. That's my view.
Right, great. So Rohit bhai, like Murtaza also said that now the audit, we need to make the audit universe, and of course all the risks need to be identified. So what kind of new risks are emerging which the audit departments or the audit team are prioritizing now?
Rahul, audit plan is always based on the certain risk matrix. It's not that risk was not there. Risk was always, you know, basis on the how particular process company is exposed to a certain risk, and accordingly audit plan is being prepared. However, recent past that risk are something which evolving very fast, and audit plan has to be dynamic, that it cannot be fixed that we started initial of the year and we are following that plan. So few risk which last 2 years which we faced, and we have asked our internal auditor to work around this risk and you know suggest plan, mitigation plan and process around this. So first of the risk is the technological transformation. lot of technology is coming, and many startup comes, they give advice that please automate this process, that process, and finally we really don't know that that skill set, whether my colleague is able to upgrade themselves, or auditor who is going to audit this system, whether they have that skill set or not. So the digital transformation itself is something is the biggest risk, and we have to really work around this, that whatever transformation or digitalization we are doing, are we doing for the long-term perspective, or we are doing only for short-term perspective. So that thing has to be done, and accordingly, based on the requirement, we have to choose the right technology for this one. Second, post-COVID, many of the companies have started, remote hybrid modeling. So that is also one of the risks in terms of data privacy as well as the productivity of the manpower. That we cannot control the data productivity at the time of when we allow the hybrid modeling. Third thing, which is again supply chain distraction. Post-US election, we are facing this problem now and there, when every day there is some news and there is a risk which is coming on. So how we change our perspective towards the risk or this type of risk. Fourth one is the climate change. Yes, climate change is one of the risks which ESG and everybody is speaking, and I think Nitin sir will also going to cover this part. Last one is the reputational risk. Reputational risk is something nowadays, it's not only the risk, it's the velocity. The time that impact your organization. Like if there is any negative news in the social media, AI-based news, and it may immediately erode your market value. Means you can go 20% market capitalization, and then top on that one, it goes the dominoes effect. If one risk play, then what will happen? Immediately, your some of the component may trigger. If you have placed the certain share, they may go. Investor may come to you. Bankers may ask further security. So this is the something where internal auditor have to think around that. What are the risks company is going to face, and if this risk is going to there, what is the mitigation plan? So these are the things which I feel when we decide the internal audit plan, we should consider.
Nitin sir, what are your views on exactly what kind of risks are getting prioritized?
So two things are happening in my view. One, in terms of the sheer breadth and width of the risk register undergoing a major change, and second, the second is what kind of tools and techniques we are using for risk identification, risk mitigation. So at a business level, I think if you take the highest level, the risk come in terms of the existence. Before 2-3 days only, I read in newspaper about HMT, the watch which when we were children, our father gave us first watch, maybe that was HMT watch. HMT is no more there, Nokia is no more there, kind of thing, right? So that actually questions what business we are in. And if 90% of business people ask this question, their answer would be around the current business, which is not the right approach. Your business actually may be serving a need which is much beyond the product, much beyond the service which you currently give. But leaving that currently for the time being, I think the risk in terms of climate, what you mentioned, in terms of ESG, in terms of cyber security, in terms of data privacy, fraud, whether cyber fraud or other kind of fraud, and therefore need of forensic, they're all increasing. And the way to handle that would be various tools in terms of technology that, whether it's AI, ML, Murtuja mentioned about, video part, visual part, imaging part, right? There are onwards several other, queries, exception reports that you run. Moonlighting you want to find out. One he mentioned about, whether in PF number there is a contribution by other employer. Other can be whether, the same permanent account number is used for your GST. So if somebody is giving service and raising GST bill, apart from doing a job, maybe there is another way of catching that. That onwards, whether, somebody is a director, so you find out from ROC records, whether somebody is already on the board of some other company, and whether he's giving services, taking only sitting fee or whatever, but there is some kind of association outside the employment. So there are ways and means to find out this, and there are tools and techniques available for meeting this. Having said so, the board today looks at little wider spectrum of emerging risk, including geopolitical risk. So if our Prime Minister Narendra Modi talks about Make in India, his so-called good friend President Trump talks about America first. So this protectionism is working across the globe, and the impact of that can be in terms of the supply chain, the location of manufacturing facilities, the selling prices of our products, the competitive scenario that may emerge. But at the end, so far the business is concerned, we all believe risk hai to isk hai. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So these days, stakeholders, regulators, they are expecting absolute assurance and real-time insights from the internal auditors, rather than doing the post-mortem when the thing is done, right? But now also we are using various tools and technologies, AI, ML, data analytics, robotics process automation, API analytics. These things are getting encouraged. So, and now the traditional way of doing the internal audit is getting discouraged as of now. And more of, you can say, imbibe this new tools and technology and leave aside the traditional way of doing internal audit. So, Raviraj sir, what are your views on this? How this thing will go into the future?
So yes, we are gradually moving to real-time kind of an audit, but at the same time, the traditional way of audit is also continuing. The way that the change are happening is that we are putting bots, we are putting controls in SAPs, we are doing dashboarding now, wherein the exceptions are even available to the process owner at this real-time basis. But at the same time, what happens is that whatever there is a term called continuous control monitoring. That is where most of the tools are now doing wonders. So in BFSI particularly, they are more advanced into it, because in BFSI the risk is higher. But in terms of industry, what is happening is that we are just adopting a hybrid structure. Wherever we have those technical support available from the ERPs that we are using, we are just putting a preventive detective controls over it, and then educating the process owners on how do they do the detective control on their own function. And then later on, whatever traditional audits that we are doing, we are taking a help of technology and putting queries on it and getting the reports out of it.
Nitin sir.
So I think assurance function always remains important to that extent, whether there are weak controls in the organization, whether there are systems and processes not working or not in existence at all, obviously need to get attention. But when internal auditors go for this kind of systematic approach to audit, they're also able to find out and bring to the attention of management additional risk, which management is perhaps not considering this. And they say this is a business usual. This is a normal part of business. Let me call supply chain risk. Now in Zydus also, for many years, when I make presentation to risk management committee, we had 5 large risks which we had identified. And come COVID-19, we found significant changes happening across the globe. Countries talking about self-sufficiency in essential critical drugs. And they say that they would like to have medicines manufactured there. The API dependence on China is not desirable. So China plus one strategy. The disruption in supply chain, freight increasing almost 3 to 4 times. 3 to 4 times I'm saying, okay? Now, so that made us now include supply chain risk as additional risk to keep on monitoring. What was the takeaway for management? Management takeaway was that, what is my current dependence on China in terms of percentage and value of a number and percentage of APIs that we import from China? The value and percentage of intermediates and KSMs, which are starting material for API, which come from China. And where do we develop alternate suppliers, which are more dependent, which are not, so to say, risk-prone, which are from largely peace-loving countries, etc. So it's a roadmap that we were able to chart out because of this exercise. So I'm saying identification of risk per se, while it's important, is not sufficient in that sense unless you are able to then decide ways and means of tackling that, and with the data points, with the analytics. So that was one part. Secondly, along with that, COVID, also we looked at, apart from supply chain risk, what is the risk in terms of some countries not only giving protection, but even on war. So war risk today, the insurance companies are talking of war risk, that this may also emerge. Most insurance companies are not today prepared to give the cover, or they'll talk about the premium where you will say, okay, let's live with that. But these are the hard realities that we need to keep in mind. And when, and I'm speaking from Zydus angle currently, when our product portfolios had large number of innovative products, innovation-driven products, both for India market as well as global markets, litigation came as very important risk. So we have litigations related to patent going in India from most innovator companies in various biosimilar products. We have litigation in US happening from pricing and other angles, because we are amongst the top 5 generic companies in US globally. So there are risks which would go along with the industry, like Rohit mentioned or Raviraj mentioned. There are industry-specific challenges and company-specific risks which also need to be identified. But the tools are across the range that you talk about, whether you use data analytics, so using BI, Tableau, queries run, SQL, all of them we are doing, and are still waiting for many more such tools to come to our help, so that we are in better risk management and control.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, sir, Rohit bhai, you have a rich experience, right? A few years back, internal audit was considered as a cost center. Now, every organization is expecting internal audit department and internal audit team to be the profit center. So exactly what kind of steps should we take to make internal audit as a profit center? And of course, based on your experience, can you give certain examples where some kind of cost savings can be achieved because of the internal audit, which is beneficial for the company?
Yes, Rahul, you rightly said that earlier internal audit function is used to be seen as a cost function. Whenever we are evaluating that which one should be my auditor for next year, we see who is the L1 in Big 6 or Big 7. But that has changed drastically. Now it's not the who is the lowest one, who is delivering more value to the organization. That is also one of the parameters while selecting to the internal auditor for this company. So based on my experience, that if we have to deliver as a additional value and not as a cost center, then 3-4 things which we have to take. Where is the technological intervention is required? Today there are many of the processes which are manual in terms of your process controls, in terms of your control, financial control, and how all these processes can be automated. I can remember in my early days in mining industry where we used to have 2 guarded gate, then 2 guarded weaveries, 2 guarded unloading station, 2 guard after exit. So total 10 to 12 guard at each of the plant we used to have. With complete automation, geofencing, ITMS and your GPS, now we don't, all the weaveries, all the gates are manless. So around 184 security guards has been removed, and this type of advice which has been given by the auditors, and initially 1 to 2 years they have monitored false positive alerts, and that has given the value addition to the company. Second part, if you ask me that where is the opportunity in the operation? In operation, when you think where opportunity lies, that has to be identified, and basis on that one, auditor can always benchmark with the external expert industry, and subject matter expert can help from the value addition to the organization. If you look the third part, it's the real-time example. We are in the mining industry, we work for the at least 12-14 location in Rajasthan, Hindustan Zinc. Physical verification is one of the tedious job which takes 10 days for all the location one by one, and that time we have to stop. Yeah, we have to stop complete production. No movement can happen at that production. So effectively we are losing 1 day production of each of the sites. So it's almost, 3% production we are, and then it comes with the, technical TSM method or manual method, then AutoCAD drawing, and finally we declare our volume. Then lab guys also came and they do the analysis and everything. As an internal auditor, KPMG had advised us, to do it, through drone. And the drone was something where, we never use in any of the bulk material, like coal material, maybe the storage, underground mines. But we have done this for at least 3 to 6 month trial, and I'm telling you nowadays we are doing complete PV in 1 day for all the location without stopping any of this one. So this is a clear value addition in terms of the volume as well as, manpower and efficiency. Like in 1 second, you are getting 2.5 million coordinates. So there is no chance of integrity or manipulation. So the accuracy in efficiency increase. That's the way I suggest that internal auditor should work as a profit center, not as a cost center.
Raviraj sir, any thoughts on that?
So I would like to say kind of a balanced approach, because it cannot be only profit center and it cannot be only a cost center. So nowadays what is happening is that yes, we are not going as a, looking at the things and vouching and doing things, but yes, we are also trying to bring in value additions out of this whole exercise. But how do you do it? So let's say, for example, if I give a example of a review which you are doing, a compliance review. Now there is no monetary value assigned to that review. So you cannot have an ROI from a statutory compliance review, wherever you are looking at the laws, rules and regulations and whether company is complying or not. That's not something where you can bring in value. But yes, if it is, let's say, order to cash, that means sales cycle or procurement cycle, you can still have a place to benchmark it. But at the same time, if you look at the supply chain, let's say for example, if you have 10 warehouses in 10 different directions. Earlier we used to have those kind of concept because of certain geographical reasons, boundaries and things like that. But let's say for example, if you start consolidating, let's say for example for us, Europe is our major market. While we may have our depots at each country level, but we can also create one more larger distribution network through one single depot in one single country, where the logistics cost for us is cheaper because you can send the materials on bulk. So these kind of things will come up when you actually first of all understand the business, understand the promoter and CFO's expectations, that in which direction you have to work. Right. And if you have a clear mandate, you can definitely use technologies to your resort and create that kind of environment where you bring in a profit element into the review. But yes, I would say that it has to be balanced, because if you ask somebody to just go for a ROI on the project, probably he will lose on a control aspects, which is also important, because if the control aspect is not looked in, it can create fraud into the system.
Got it. So, Nitin bhai, what are your thoughts on that? Cost center or profit center?
Well, it's both, and I agree with Raviraj that the balanced approach is required. So, while there is certainly a cost attached in terms of the fees to be paid to internal auditors, and organization ideally wants to make some value out of that also. The value driver perhaps is not a number one priority. Number one priority would, at least for large companies, listed companies, whether audit committees, the audit committees want assurance from internal auditor that there are systems, processes, controls which are in existence. There are enough of checks and balances in the organization. But conduct of business is meeting governance requirements, whether from Companies Act, whether from SEBI, Stock Exchange, and other regulators. So these are the primary drivers. The way overall, the world has remain in terms of, risk on and with the turbulence that we are expecting. I called today's time having 3 T's. The 3 T's are terror, tariff, and Trump in that ascending order of intensity. So in that environment, you need assurance, you need business continuity. You don't want to have supply chain risk. You want that business would not stop for any reason. So enough of checks and balances on that, enough of assurance on that, I think is a primary consideration for company and board. Having said so, because internal auditors work for several other organizations in the same industry as well as different industry, there are various best practices they are able to bring as a part of their audit, which can help in terms of cost reduction, which can help in terms of profit maximization, which can help in terms of bringing more efficiencies, reduction of waste, improving yield, reducing cycle time, etc. So there are ways and means in which this can be done. So is that going to be the criteria for choice of internal auditor, that whosoever is going to bring maximum profit? No. Having said so, in Zydus we have standardized what we call internally 4 C's analysis. These 4 C's stand for, first C is credentials of the firm. So if I'm putting Protiviti or anybody else, I will say, what are the credentials? What are the number of audits you are doing? What is the industry experience they are bringing? Which other names, I'll say, okay, if somebody is done, we can go. So these are the credentials of the firm. Start with that level. Second is the capabilities of team. And this we have learned a long way because the name may be very reputed, but the particular team which is going to work on your project or your audit work, what are their achievements? What is their biodata? What is their qualification, achievements, the audits that they have done, the organizations they have worked, the peers that they have worked for? That will tell me that, okay, what are the capabilities of the team which is going to work. The third is chemistry. Chemistry with the company, chemistry with the organization, chemistry with the promoters. Do we have experience of working with them? And are we comfortable in terms of the cultural fit, in terms of the way of working, in terms of the time zone, etc. They're dealing with the team, the views of team about them, right? So that's the chemistry part. And the fourth, last comes cost and commercials. So cost is not that important. And while the cost is one of the ingredients of the 4 C's, that comes last. And therefore we look at, along with that, so how this practically gets captured is that when we decide the areas of internal audit for a particular year, then we decide these are the areas which are related to business. These are the areas which are related to more of assurance, function, systems, governance, process, controls. And these are the areas which can, with benchmarking or some other tools, techniques, can help us in terms of better cost control or revenue maximization, better prices, etc. Let me give 1 or 2 examples. So we had one internal audit which pointed out there are some duplicate payments of some invoices. Now that means somewhere lack of control in terms of how do you say that it is the same invoice. And Murtuza gave example of having stayed in a hotel, changing dates, etc., and then putting the same bill, right? So how do you control duplicate payments? Second, if you have various plants, for example, in Zydus we have more than 30 manufacturing plants. Now, how the scrap gets sold at a particular location? What is the rate that you are getting? Which are the vendors you are working? Are you working with a decentralized setup? You have a centralized setup? Do you make comparison of your per kg realization of scrap across the plants? Yeah, that would give some insights that whether everything is, number one, above board, that is one. Secondly, whether we have been able to negotiate proper prices. Third, whether we are able to go to the right people. There are some organizations which work with middlemen. There are some organizations which work directly with the recyclers of the waste, right? So that will give you some kind of insight. From that point onwards, whether there are idle assets in the organization. We have experienced that there is a particular machine which is remaining idle at one plant. Another plant is ordering the same machine. Right? These are all practical ways. Now, how do you control this? Okay, create a portal, put all the idle equipments with the specification, technical specs, capacity, MAC, model, etc. on the idle assets portal. And anytime purchase is going to order equipment, they will first look at that list and say whether that equipment is in existence with us or not. So these are the few examples I'm saying, but there are so many different areas in which the validation is done. Once we had given the internal auditor scope to compare our API purchase prices with the API purchase prices of our peers where they are auditing, right? And they say, yeah, Zydus is doing good job. So that kind of assurance is very important for the organization. So yes, it can become cost center for someone, profit center for others. We consider it as an investment center for us.
Great, thank you. So Nitin bhai, taking lead from you, like you are saying that the team capability, team composition, that is very, very important, right? Now the expectations of the stakeholders are changing. Various tools and technologies are coming into picture. So how do you think how this is going to impact the team composition and the team educational qualifications? So do you think IA as a profession is becoming less and less dependent on chartered accountants? Do you think so? And of course, exactly what kind of cost percentage is getting dedicated to training and development of the team members, the IA team members?
It's a very interesting question. So first of all, on a lighter note, when the situation demands, I say I'm MBA from IIM, where there is going to be value for MBAs. Where is going to value of chartered accountants? So I say I'm chartered accountant. Having said so, I think the chartered accountant as a profession has delivered a good value in general, as a finance function, as a service function, as a value addition function, control function, governance function. But the way of looking at certain things and the way of looking at, let's say, technology, sometimes, make chartered accountant function little difficult. So the way the emerging risks are, the emerging areas are, organizations find that along with the chartered accountants, you need to deploy other domain experts. For example, you should have data analysts and engineers to understand, how the power of data can be used, how the analytics can be done, how the exception report can be found out, how the inefficiencies can be pinpointed out, and some validation can be done for the organization. Secondly, if you say that there is a high possibility, given the structure of the business, given the credit, given the decentralized power in the organization, there are chances of any kind of theft, any kind of measurement, any kind of misappropriation. Then you need expert, like a forensic expert, who is trained to look at, how the forensic auditors would be looked at. That doesn't mean that a chartered accountant cannot acquire those skills, but I'm saying now there are experts available who can give these kind of services. And similarly on the cyber security, which is a very important threat for the organization, and organizations need to work both in terms of internally having that kind of people who can look at cyber security aspect, as well as external expert to say that everything is in order. So both need to be there. So let me talk about COVID time, pharma companies and especially companies who are working on vaccines were target. And we were told this by no other but Government of India intelligence cell. They actually deputed some people at our vaccine plant, taking care of our systems and processes, having a complete control from a distant as to how Zydus is performing. So government was also seized of this kind of probability of risk, given the threats that they received from different corners of the world. And what it meant for Zydus was to strengthen our team in terms of people knowing cybersecurity as an area and how to guard against that. We also took help of consultants to install robust systems in terms of handling that. Having said so, let me tell you that this is always going to remain an evolving sphere, a journey. You can never say that you've done enough in terms of cybersecurity. Recently, I was with National Stock Exchange, and because Zydus completed 25 years of a listing, we were invited by National Stock Exchange and Chairman Ashish Chauhan to NSE, and then he took us to his various centers, including the data security center. And so interesting was it. And he said there were about 20 plus people only monitoring cyber security angle, working for 24 hours. Of course in shifts, but all 24 hours they are working. And in the number of threats which are there on NSC, on a day-to-day basis, the chart was showing. And can you believe that the number of threats on a daily basis were running into lakhs, I'm saying, number of threats, and which they were able to neutralize using their own cybersecurity technology and strength. And they said, globally, NSE is the largest stock exchange in terms of volume of transactions and having the best track record in terms of cybersecurity threat mitigation. And they said, they still keep on investing. So that's the message, keep investing in technology. And that's the way you will be able to ultimately try and mitigate this. I'm not saying you are ultimately going to completely eliminate any of this risk. Thank you.
So basically, you are suggesting that team should be a mix of chartered accountants as well as the technical guys, whether they are civil engineers, electrical engineers, or they are the cyber security engineers.
Absolutely. So, now, when you talk about civil engineer, let me give you one example. Zydus invests almost 1,000 crore, 1,200 crore every year in terms of capex plans, new capital expenditure, to expand the existing production facilities and to build new plants. And we wanted to have check on terms of the project capital expenditure and say whether everything is appropriate or not. Now the contractors, the civil contractors, when they, for example, build a particular building, and there is a, for example, the pitch that they have to find out. The depth of pitch basis, there is some kind of charge that we have to pay. Now consider this situation that after the building is already constructed, for us there is no way to find out the depth in which they have actually gone, right? But even the amount of work that you have done in terms of square feet or length and breadth and height, etc., we will normally going with architect, overall plan, that is as per plan, the plan indicated so much of height and this is the height. But then we thought it better, as advised by internal auditors, to have civil engineers in our project team, and civil engineers in our internal, the management audit team that we have in Zydus. So we have now civil engineers as a full-time employees who do this kind of checking for every project. And almost in every such internal audit, we find out some lapses. Right? So that pays on its own.
Got it. Raviraj sir, any comments?
Yeah, just I echo what he says, and it is absolutely necessary to have a different dimensional view on an audit. So like he rightly mentioned, we also have similar kind of projects every year. So what we do is that, we deploy a consultant 3 ways. Like, we have the consultants to review the RA bills and the regular things. But at the same time, we also deploy internal audit team, from an SME side, which is, we have a co-source model with KPMG. So we have those people coming in from them, a civil engineer or mechanical engineer or electrical engineer, depending upon, what kind of work is to be reviewed.
Right.
They come for a time charge and they come and review those things and, give the value addition to that perspective. Like he mentioned cybersecurity, the same thing is happening that, we need to, first of all, know our readiness. And for knowing our readiness, there are different framework, like NIST framework is available for cybersecurity. Now you cannot do it in-house, though you have the team inside from an IT security team. But sometimes to sail through your point to the board of directors and the audit committee, you need some SMEs to come up, stand up and say that, these are the things that we need to invest into. And for that also you need those kind of experts coming in and giving value addition, because they must have seen similar things into different industry and different companies. So at the same time, when it comes to the composition of your own team, it also depends on what kind of audit universe you have and what kind of risk that you want to look at. So you need to have those kind of expert, whether they are chartered accountants, whether they are MBA, like, somebody wants to do a treasury audit. Probably an internal auditor would be able to look at the process. But if he has to understand how the ECB transaction is, what is the FEMA regulations and how the compliances are done, whether the transaction processing are done properly, whether the M&A transaction was structured properly or not, they are not able to comment on it. So then you need different experts on looking at those things which is mostly untouched area as of now. So if you ask typical internal auditor to do a treasury audit or an M&A transaction audit or your R&D audit or maybe an end-to-end supply chain audit, probably your team would not be capable of doing it. But the way to give them an experience is that you put them into the team who is doing that work, and they on the job learn how to do those kind of reviews, and basically gradually after year over year, when you have that kind of routine audits, that is what I call an investment. So sometimes we have an in-house team, but when you deploy the experts, you put your 1 or 2 team members also to support them on data analytics, because certain things are remaining common. Only the expertise is into certain areas where you read ECB documents and infer from it that what are the conditions precedents or subsequent to the loan and whether we have complied it or not, or things like that. Normal chartered accountant can do it, but they need an angle, a perspective, how this is to be looked in. So you can train those teams on those aspects, and that is what I would say the investment, because otherwise your resources are not required when you have an expert doing it. But then you invest your time and effort and money to train and coach your own team. We also send our team members and encourage them to take trainings on their own subjects, their ERP systems that they are working on, because we have a global presence and our different subsidiaries, whichever are acquired, have different ERP systems. So we need to also learn that. And for learning that, you need to engage yourself into learning it. We also encourage them to attend these kind of conferences, seminars, take certain courses, which are certification courses and things like that, so that at least they enrich their experience and invest into their own selves.
I'd just like to add a few examples to what Raviraj mentioned in terms of subject matter expert and how this is very important. So sometime back we had power and fuel as one audit area, and the internal auditors then brought the person who had audited various large organizations, Vedanta and Tata's and Reliance, SR, where power becomes very, very important part of their cost of production. And then looking at various, at least the generic machines, the motors, the transformers, the DG sets, etc. And they said that whether, in terms of making comparison, whether there are opportunities for saving power. Now, opportunity saving power can be, by way of, change of or replacement of some old, machines, as well as by change of technology. Instead of using, let's say, X type of, fuel, use Y type of fuel, etc. But that was very important, insightful for us, because making internal comparison there doesn't make sense, but making external comparison with people who use significant amount and value of power, there, more insights can come. Similarly, we had one contract management audit review, where a legal expert was brought in to say that, like Raviraj mentioned about, various CPs and CS, condition precedent and onward. There could be, date of renewal, there automatic renewal. Like in one particular agreement in our case, there was an automatic renewal clause unless a prior notice of 12 months is given for termination or change. So if you miss that date, then again the contract gets automatically reviewed. And if you wanted to have any kind of discussion, renegotiation of terms prior to that, you miss the deadline. And now there are softwares available which will only read, for example, the closing date, the termination date, or notice date, etc., and give you summary across various agreements for you to review and put this in terms of your Outlook calendar as a reminder. Thank you.
Thank you. So, sir, Rohit bhai, like we have our ambitious audience here. So, what piece of advice you can give them so that they exceed the stakeholders' expectation, they can use new kind of tools and technologies, and they can maximize the value addition what they are doing as of now? with their clients or with their internal departments?
Sure, Rahul bhai, my advice to all my young fellow chartered accountant that they should think like a risk professional, act like a business partner, and deliver like an entrepreneur. So what they have to do, they just not audit the compliance. They have to think why behind the process. They have to meet the stakeholder, try to understand their expectation, what is the expectation from internal audit function, with various stakeholders, including the audit committee, marketing head, finance, and CEO, CFO, CXO, whatever is there. But they have to meet continuously. Third part, that what I suggest them, they have to use the technology, ask the bold question on the data, frame their expectation, and finally, last thing, that the way world is changing, AI is coming, we have to upgrade our skill. If we don't upgrade our skill, I will say that after 3 years or 4 years, audit will be done by only machines, not by the individuals. So it's better that we upgrade ourselves, do the courses, try to understand digitalization, how data is coming, from which sources is coming, and accordingly we can audit complete entire value chain. That's the my advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's not a single piece of advice available. There are multiple things. Just to get into deep dive what he said and what I started saying, that we need to understand the expectations from each stakeholder. So whether it is a process owner, whether it is your own team, or whether it is audit committee or CFO. So let's say a classic example for CFO, like Nitin bhai was saying that looking at the terms and conditions of the agreement. So in a hindsight, you say that, what is in it? But I can give you an example. In pharma, we do a lot of in-licensing, out-licensing deals. We do a lot of profit-sharing deals with our customers. While, we sell to a distributor and then he further sells into the market and we are entitled for a profit share. Now, what is the value addition into it? So the value addition is that, you compare all the agreements. You take out the exceptions and you look at it that, whether we are actually making sense of, entering into those agreements or not, whether there is any clause which is detrimental to the company, which is differential to the company. Now you have tools and technologies to do it, right?
Yeah.
So slowly and gradually, like he rightly mentioned that, the technology, you upload the documents and technology will give you the differences. But at the same time, what is important and what is not important? We will teach technology that also. That these are the clauses which are important. If this is machine learning is happening right now. But what you need to upgrade yourself is to what is important for my organization, what is important for my stakeholder, what is important from audit committee perspective, and what is important to upgrade my team from that perspective is very important. That is what I want to conclude and summarize.
Nitin bhai.
So Rahul, as I initially mentioned, the function of internal auditor involves 3 important objectives: protect value, enable performance, and build trust. And this would be for all the stakeholders in the organization, whether they are business people, CEO, CFO, board, audit committee onwards, all the people. So you'll have to see what would be the requirement if you view from a particular stakeholder and say whether your audit plan includes that, addresses that. Technology is very important. One will have to keep abreast in terms of what's happening in the outside world and keep oneself up to date. And the value addition part, which you earlier mentioned, for young people who want to have first-time entry in the organization, they don't have possibly the track record. Or somewhere they will have to, there's no guarantee, but sort of put out a case in terms of the right value addition that they can do the organization. Somewhere where, for example, my thumb rule would be for newcomers to talk about the benefit to the organization can be 10 times or 20 times the audit fee you would be entitled to. So you say you charge 10 lakh rupees, you give benefit of 1 crore minimum, right? If that is the kind of sort of assurance and with the capability you show, if you are able to demonstrate ultimately, you would make your headway in the organization. Is it a tall game? If you think so, I need to recite these 2 lines from my ghazal and say, चाहे कुछ मुमकिन न हो, चाहे कुछ मुमकिन न हो, पर रचा कर देखिए, रेत में एक आध कश्ती भी चला कर देखिए।
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Rohit bhai, Raviraj bhai, Nitin bhai. So we can now open the floor for questions. Any questions for our panelists?
There are two topics is close to my heart. One is ESG and one is AI. So I want to ask two questions to a panelist about AI and ESG. First is about ESG. So you are coming from a big giants companies. So how do you see the ESG market? How do you see the ESG is evolving? Whether it's just a compliance or it is providing a value to you. The second question. So, two companies are here are from Pharmaceuticals. And I have heard about, one startups, ex-Google CEO, Eric Smith has invested in that startup. Now these days, personalized medicine is coming to discovery. So you have a discovery of one medicine just now within 1 hour, and the within a other hour the second medicine will be staged on, whether it's working or not. It's coming, the AI is working like that. So how do you see AI and how we are implementing that those AI, because you are a giants companies, and if someone is startup is you doing that, so how do you see that?
So first, let me talk about ESG. So ESG is not in theory. When ESG started, many corporates thought that this is a compliance requirement, and therefore, to prepare report, you need to give sustainability report, you need to give BRSR report, then you need to have ESG rating, etc. And people believe this is the cost. But when organizations started working on that, organizations practicing that, there are so many benefits which the organizations found, even the financial benefit, tangible benefits. I'm not talking about corporate image benefits, which are anyway there as a byproduct. So when you look at the environment and you look at your water consumption, your power consumption, your emission of gas, etc. And when we started working on these different areas, we found there were so many opportunities and the projects which will have their own payback. One case in point is the renewable energy, for example. So Zydus has almost now 25% of its power requirements met through renewable energy. So we went for a hybrid model in terms of investing where solar and wind are combined. That's hybrid based on government of Gujarat policy, where 74% investment can be done by the producer, the electricity company, and 26% can come from other investors, including the users basically, like us. Can you believe what is the payback period of our investment? Less than 12 months. Less than 12 months. That is the payback period of investment. Therefore, it makes abundant sense. What we are now working is that beyond that, how can we go? Now there are requirements, there are conditions, minimum 1000 megawatt, etc. requirements in a place, etc. There are conditions. So everywhere hybrid doesn't work. So somewhere you say whether rooftop will work, solar will work, some other thing will work. But we are trying to find out. As a part of that, we also found out opportunities for energy conservation. One is the requirement and how you are addressing that, right? Whether your own power, your grid power, your renewable power, that's the second part. But first is whether there is a right efficient energy consumption or there is access and there are ways and means to reduce. From that onwards, whether carbon footprint you are able to reduce, the water consumption you are able to reduce, we have, instead of using the normal water, we enter into contract with government and we are using Narmada water at certain plants, wherever it's possible. There was a huge cost in terms of crores of rupees to lay that pipeline first. Because the government said Narmada canal water is available at this point. From that point to your plant, the pipeline is required, which made crores of rupees of investments. And then we made our people work on that. Is there a business case, first of all? And there was a business case. How business case? Compared to the investment, given the water quality, and because of that, the water consumption that will be required compared to the current water that we are using through borewell, yeah, it made sense and there was a payback for that. So that awakened the organization to look at ESG as business as usual and a corporate citizen role, buy product, leave it, which are anyway there. Okay. Coming back on AI part, I must say that in general, except for technology companies, BFSI sector, for manufacturing, hardcore bricks and mortar company, people are looking at AI investment, but the speed is slow. Because people would like to do on a pilot basis, see how the results come, then roll it out across different plants. So we have taken many such small projects in our different plants, in different operations, in marketing, seeing how the AI can work. For example, in one plant, through the help of one IT company, we say, give me the predictability of plant breakdown. Okay, given different parameters, including the temperature, the season, the products, the process, and so many things, built into that in terms of data, and say, here is the predictable part of plant going for breakdown. And you take the steps prior to that in terms of ensuring that you do whatever the small things are required in terms of the maintenance part, avoiding the breakdown. And the breakdown, depending on the plant and the products that you run, the batch that you are reaching, the market you are going to address, can run into crores. For example, in our joint venture plant with Zydus Hospira, one oncology batch failing for whatever reason can cost 3 to 4 crore rupees. And the steps that you can take, the investment that you do in terms of technology, may be far less than that to prevent this kind of occurrence. Having said, I'm not saying for a variety of other reasons it can happen. Business has always the risk as a part of that, and you can't completely avoid that. But yes, tools and techniques can help. Third, on the personalized medicine part. Personalized medicine is being talked about for some years by now, implemented to a very minuscule level as of now, but has a promise in future. Till the time the cost comes down, the acceptability, adaptability will be smaller. Why the promise makes sense is that as the word stands for personalized medicine, there is medicine for Nitin Parekh will be different than what is for Rohit and what is for Raviraj. Even if it is for the same element, seemingly, let's say it's X element, and as per doctor's diagnosis, let's say 3 of us has one particular ailment, but the medicine which 3 of us will require today, which comes as the same prescription from the doctor, will be very different for 3 of us. Looking at our own body profile, looking at our own digesting system, looking at all other elements or body parameters that we have, weak or strong, would decide the dose, would decide possibly the manner of taking that, and the what we call the method of administering that drug. Onward, several things change. And because it is personalized for a person, you can understand, every cost that I will incur for developing the medicine, I will like to charge to you. And of course, like you, there can be some hundreds of people around the world. But having said so, if I'm today, for example, marketing a particular product in US, which goes in terms of crores of pills as a generic product, would be very different than this kind of personalized medicine.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, thanks to all the panel members. And my question is that every company have some special features, as you two belongs to the pharma company. So for the internal auditor, which are the special aspects is to be covered by internal audit? If you throw some insights, then it will be helpful to all of us.
So, being a highly regulated company, the compliance to the regulatory aspects in terms of operations and production is something which is very important for us, because if that fails, the entire business is at stake. So that is number one. That is a risk also, and that is an opportunity also, because that prevents other to enter into our market also. Second is you must have seen newspaper in a couple of years back that MCI is taking steps against the pharmaceutical companies and the medical practitioners having tie-ups and doing certain practices. So that is something also which is taken care by the regulator now. Apart from that, it is kind of an FMCG compared, kind of an audit where our products are temperature sensitive. We have different stacking norms. We have different distribution norms compared to the other manufacturing companies on other kind of products. Apart from that, all the activities remains the same. When you look at the order to cash or procure to pay and things like that, most of the thing remains the same. Apart from you will have discounted sales in any and every industry. We also have a discounted sales, but the pattern and the way we put controls are different. We also have a procurement where we have a single source or maybe limited source available for regulated markets because of its peculiar DMF, that is drug master file filings and all this. These are all peculiar risk attached to a pharmaceutical company. Otherwise, the business remains as usual. Cybersecurity remains the same, right? Your hire to retire remains the same. Most of the thing remains the same, but only this supply chain or maybe regulatory, that is GMP compliance or the compliance with the FDA and all. But for that, we have specialized teams of QA and QC who are the maker checker. Like, we have 3 lines of defense in finance. We have 3 lines of defense in production and manufacturing also to look at those things. Where internal auditors generally do not get into the GMP audit or things like that. But yes, we do look at the processes of QA and QC, whether they have performed their duties or not. I think apart from that, nothing peculiar about the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Well, Raviraj has rightly mentioned about importance of regulatory as an important aspect to be observed. Pharma is amongst globally the most regulated industries. And the reason for that is because we touch lives. The medicines, if wrong medicine is taken or the composition is wrongly compared to what it should be, you can affect the lives of the people, right? And therefore, first, in terms of your composition of the drug, whether it meets the standard requirements. For example, it's a generic drug, whether I'm completely having a bioequivalence with the innovator drug, which is an approved drug, right? And there are various parameters for that whether the bioequivalence matches or not. We in Zydus called our corporate slogan as dedicated to life. And dedicated to life is not a corporate slogan, you have to live with that. And it's not very easy, let me tell you, it's not very easy. Amongst all the lists that currently we have 8 lists in our risk management committee where I make presentation. The first risk is regulatory risk. First, number 1 risk for us is the regulatory risk. And we are dealing with various, global markets, especially US. For Zydus, 50% of my consolidated revenues come from US. And there are various plants which are all US audited, US approved plants. It was also part of our risk mitigation that before some years we only had a Moria or in Chango rubber plant. And that plant, if it gets any kind of regulatory action from US authorities, then I have a problem. The reason is that in US, for growth of business in generic, the only way of getting growth is new products. compared to what some people who are not aware, for them it will be interesting to know that the prices of generic products on an average come down by 5%, 7%, sometimes even 10% every year. Every year prices come down. And then also you need to make profit. And then also you need to make growth. So for example, if my sales in US is, let's say $1 billion, then I may get $50 million just reduction in price. Now that's a sales, but whatever the sales reduction is even profit reduction, right? So to counteract that, the strategy is to keep coming out with products which are better products in terms of gross contribution, better products in terms of limited competition or complexity, and therefore you will find better age or market share in those products. And therefore this remains very important. Having said so, I must say that the living with the slogan, as I was saying, not easy. Let me give one very concrete example that during COVID, before the vaccines were found, remdesivir injection was considered to be the only savior for the COVID patients. And there was a huge shortage. People in Ahmedabad would know that there were lines and lines to get 6 doses of remdesivir injection, right? During that period, our chairman Pankaj Patel said that this is not a time to make profit, this is a time to serve the society and patients at large. And therefore we crashed our remdesivir prices significantly to the extent that Zydus remdesivir prices were the lowest in the country. And when we reduced the prices by about 50%, some of our competitors also matched their prices, we reduced it again by 50%. Now that is the way you serve the society, by living the slogan, not by talking the slogan.
Thank you, Nitin bhai.
Thank you, panelists, for sharing your insight. Sir, during your journey from the corporate side, you have worked with the small size firm, mid-size firm, and now Big 4 and Big 6. Sir, you have highlighted certain aspects like subject matter experts and team capabilities that make stand out Big 6 as compared to the other mid-size firm. Sir, your thoughts on the things that need to be improved by the CA firms to match the deliverables of the Big 6?
Keep yourself adaptable to time and change. Keep knowledge of changing regulatory regime, whether it is changing Companies Act, new judgments of Gujarat High Court, Rajasthan High Court, Supreme Court on tax matters, regulations, CB orders, SEBI penalty orders, insider trading matters. Onward, so many things happening, FEMA matters, changes happening RBI in terms of ECB regulations, in terms of what can be funded, what cannot be funded. Let me give one very recent concrete example. Before this change happened, Indian companies, if they want to, let's say, give guarantee for their overseas entities, and the overseas entities want to acquire something which is related to India, or trying to do anything in India, RBI said this is round tripping. Actually, it's not your subsidiary doing, it's only you are doing. So if I am forbidden to do something in India, which through my overseas entity I'm trying to do, RBI would say this is round tripping, not allowed. Now, let's say my US subsidiary wants to acquire anything in India, and the bank says that Zydus will have to give a corporate guarantee for the US subsidiary. It is now allowed. So this is example I'm saying that, are you aware about this? What's happening in the outside world? So when you go to your client, and especially if there are mid-sized companies as your client, the clients want you to be answering everything. They don't say that you are only chartered accountant. They say about this pricing, what should be done? About this distribution, should I appoint another person as a distributor? I'm already there in Nadiad, whether it makes sense to go in a near place or not. Now you're not a business expert, but are you having the pulse of business? Are you trying to understand the requirements? And the most important thing for understanding is listening. Would you listen to the problem empathetically? Would you have a logical approach to solve the problem? Would you be able to tap the knowledge from globally? Now Google is a great master, right, to teach you. But are you tapping all the resources, including now there are so many technologies. Google is now, some people are saying it's old. There are various other refined tools available. For example, Perplexity is one. You write on Perplexity, say, give me summary of various court cases on Reliance Industries. Before you have just completed, it will, in a fraction, it will be complete list. Use the power of technology. And say you are here as a solution master, not to contravent and aggravate the problem.
So I'll just add one thing here is that, it's an investment that, somebody has to do. And I keep on saying to my team also is that, audit of technology and audit through technology. So basically, if you remember this, probably, you'll invest into right thing and your business or practice will, flourish.
Last advice from my side, don't try to cook everything for yourself. Try to become the specialist. Try to use the networking, and that will really help you, to grow it. Thank you.
Sir, would there be an expectation from internal auditors with specific reference to compliance audit? Manufacturing companies in India are subject to hundreds of laws. So when you are designing the scope of internal audit with reference to compliance, law compliance, what should be included, what should not be included? What assurance should we expect from the internal audit? Which laws will he check? What will he not check? Or how should that scope be designed with reference to compliance of laws?
Okay, so I'll take it. So basically, when you do a statutory compliance review, the key is that, first of all, you need to understand whether the company has any mechanism of repositorying, the entire checklist on whether which are the laws and which are the clauses of the laws are applicable to them or not. If that is not there, then it is a starting point. We need to collate, first of all, that list. There are certain tools readily available in the market. But still, what you need to do is you need to match it up with your own, organization's requirement, whether it is applicable or not applicable. So that's the first step. Second step is that, you also need to give the risk rating to it. So according to me, I always give a higher, rating for imprisonment cases. So whenever it is for a promoter, director, or maybe a compliance officer is at risk of, imprisonment, that's the first criteria that you have to look at it. So that is the scope. You cannot have a scope limitation on that part. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the monetary part. So what are the penalties or the monitoring, monetary effect on that? So you need to also again filter it out from that. And there are certain clauses. So it doesn't end on to the regulatory compliances. You also have the Pollution Control Board certificate. There are compliance conditions to it. There are certain contracts where there are conditions to it. When you have a JV partner or private equity investing into your company, there are certain clauses into it. That is not forming part of your regular checklist. You also need to include that because, if you are doing something contravening to those kind of agreements, then also your business can come at a halt. So you need to look at holistically these aspects, and you have to specify that, these are the things that you will cover. And to give a better assurance, generally you don't do it at a time, depending upon the size of the organization. If it is a small organization, you can still attempt to, but then the line items are too many and you have to look at too many things. So generally what we do is we distribute it into maybe a couple of years, 3 years program or 5 years program, depending upon the length and breadth of what we need to look at it. So critical areas we look at every year. Whatever imprisonment compliances are there, we look at every year. For high penalty, every 2 years, or maybe we have a system where our compliance officer or company secretary has certain people under him who will continuously, monitor those kind of imprisonment or kind of a checklist where the monetary limits are high. And rest we divide into number of years. I hope I have answered your question.
To add 2 more points. So one is a compliance by certificate, which is required, and another is compliance by conduct. So compliance by conduct and to be examined by internal auditors, I think is extremely Herculean task, for large companies, given the plethora of regulations and compliance requirements. So organizations anyways, as Raviraj mentioned, need to install systems and use the tools which are available. We have a tool which we call Gilex. We added word Zydus, but it's a Ligatrix tool where regularly in the quarterly report, a legal head has to give the compliance of our own set of parameters. And before you find it very surprising, let me tell you, there are 55,000 line items monitored. 55,000 line items monitored regularly. I, heading finance and legal function, every month ask the report that what is the compliance level in meeting those lines. And every quarter the certificate is given to the board of directors. For auditors, now having said so, one is that, we have a documentary based compliance. So for example, in Ligatrix, across various plants and units, for example, you say whether PF is deposited as per timeline. Now one checklist is yes, no, right? But Ligatrix does not end there. So for example, it says yes, the proof is required to be attached with a scanned copy of Chalana. That's sitting in central office in Ahmedabad. We monitor across all the plants and all the facilities that this is done. So this is an example of how this is done, right? At the same time, when it comes to internal auditors, in every year's internal audit plan, there are certain areas which are related to compliance, but which will be very specific to the law and specific to the unit. For example, you say in my so-and-so Baddi plant, I want to check the compliance related to Factories Act. Now, various laws related to Factories Act, the provisions of that only will be the part of internal audit that time. What we do later on is that we have a global CAPA model. Pharma CAPA is corrective action, preventive action. Okay, so there's a global CAPA model where whatever observations are there, let's say for my Baddi plant, would be put on that portal, and automated mail will go to concerned people of other plants. And they need to then see whether any of these observations are applicable to them or not. Then they will certify the compliance of that they don't have any issues related to that. If they have, they also need to take corrective action. So that is the way we in the organization get better comfort. And next time, let's say next quarter, there is another kind of compliance. So you say, what is about the pollution control in my Goa plant? And then, we apply those observations across various plants. That's the way compliance in a gradual fashion over a period we take. When we take a new area, we say, well, what was the last time this aspect was audited by internal auditor? We say, oh, it was only before 3 years. Okay, this is an important item. This is very important for the organization in terms of compliance. Again, include that. To ensure that the checks and balances systems which are put in place at that time as a corrective action and preventing action are working or they are not working or are getting deviated.
Yeah, just to add one thing here is that this is something that we used to do for all our sales offices across the globe. That whatever observations or whatever control lapses or whatever things that we observe in one office, if the similar model is there in the other offices, we actually send that kind of list to them, and we ask them the CFO certification that whether these things are complied in that particular region or geography in terms of a business risk, not the regulatory risk, but business risk. So harmonization of these audit points across your business units and things like that is also the practice that we used to do, because that gives you comfort that okay, you have observed certain things in certain territory, but whether it is prevalent into different practice, because organization is kind of a promoter driven organization, the system, processes or philosophy remains the same. So whether those kind of controls are built into different geographies or not is also important, just to add on to regulatory things.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of ICAI Ahmedabad branch, it's my honor and privilege to extend heartfelt vote of thanks for conclusion of this conference on internal audit. I would like to thank all the panelists on the dais and our moderator for organizing this session. And special thanks to Purushottam Khandelwal sir, CCM, and chairman, dynamic chairman of Ahmedabad branch, Neerav Agarwal sir, for organizing such great session for the members. Thank you all. I would like to request everyone to join for the lunch. Thank you.